Alien tomb robbing, deep sea sinking ship, deep space exploration. In 1405, Zheng He led his boatmen to sea, but on his way back, he encountered pirates who pretended to surrender and came to rob him. 10,000 people fought at sea and killed 5,000 thieves. The pirate leader Chen Zuyi fled to the east. Zheng He pursued deep into the eastern ocean, facing heavy fog on the sea. Through the fog, March suddenly became clear, but he saw two red suns hanging in the sky, and the stars moving around in confusion. In the 21st century, Zheng He dug up an ancient sea map that recorded the secret of immortality, and set sail to the deep sky outside the system to pursue the traces of immortals, demons, gods, and ghosts. In the fog of interstellar travel and the era of navigation, there are mysterious historical mysteries hidden. Between the bustling city in the shadow of the starry seaport lies a terrifying mystical tragedy, demon and immortal ancient buildings, divine and ghostly items, eerie legends, mystical relics, records in historical corners, unknown figures. Opening the fog to glimpse them, the world is surprisingly so mysterious and vast. A picture of an ancient sea. A young explorer. Some stories about exploring the starry sky. Not too hard science fiction, completely fictional after the Ming Dynasty, mainly focused on exploration without involving anything else. Keywords of the novel. Endless Journey without pop-ups, Endless Journey TXT complete collection download, Endless Journey latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Exit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Way out in 2023, Jinhui Road, Fuan City. The autumn street appears cold and dry, with a few yellowed locust leaves falling leisurely, piled up in the corners of the old street and basking in the sun, emitting a strange fragrance. On the street side, there is a pawn shop with a semi-open rolling shutter, and a dozen or so packed boxes are piled up at the entrance. Dust is filled in the shops, and one by one, it overflows onto the street. Cough. Cough. Zheng He ran out of the pawn shop with a broom and helped the old locust tree take off his mask, panting heavily until the fragrant air washed away the dust from his lungs. He stood under the tree with a disheveled face, his gray and white mist floating outwards. The broom shook a little, and passers-by walked around him. There's really no way. From the opening of the shop until now, I estimate that the dead corners behind several cabinets have not been swept even once. The dust is thicker than the soles of the shoes, and even a broom cannot move them. Dust returns to dust. Zheng He patted the soil and looked to the right side of the shop. There was a table with a finely crafted mechanical watch, which was always spotless and didn't need to be cleaned. The pawn shop has been in operation for 40 years, and there are not many serious transactions. Instead, it has been repairing watches for more than 30 years, creating a considerable reputation. That's all for now. This will become a hot pot restaurant next month. Strange things in the industry have long been posted online, everything that can be sold has been sold, and everything that cannot be sold has been collected and returned to the basement to eat ashes. Sell or not? It's not worth much money. When he was a child, he used to look at shops all year round and had a clear idea that if the pawn shop had good business and could receive good things, he wouldn't have to repair a 30-year watch for others. And he also couldn't bear to sell it. His adoptive father didn't leave any belongings, there weren't many photos, and only these old treasures that had accompanied him for decades were considered relics. Buzzing. The phone suddenly vibrated. Zheng He took out his phone and glanced at it. It was sent by his foster mother, who said that he would finish work early tonight and not need to go to the hospital. He could clean up the pawn shop and go home. Got it, Mom. Zheng He replied with a voice message. My adoptive father Jiang Jiangguo passed away 6 months ago, and my younger sister Jiang Meng was hospitalized 3 months ago. Jiang Meng is very sick. The cost of treatment cost millions. In order to raise the cost of the surgery, the family smashed the pot and sold the iron, and this shop was also forced to be sold, but nobody knows how long it will take for her to recover. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a daze. The fleeting memories of the past often roll in my mind. During the Chinese New Year, when my family reunites, it suddenly becomes like this. Misfortune never comes alone. Zheng He took a deep breath and continued to sweep the floor, sweeping the shop clean and moving the boxes one by one to the car. It was already 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening when he finished driving a small truck on the road. When waiting for the traffic lights, Zheng He looked up and saw a massive planet that occupied 1/10 of the sky floating above him, emitting a deep blue color. That is Trap.D, also a terrestrial planet that looks quite similar to its homeland Earth, but its atmospheric composition is not suitable for human habitation. And people can't get by either. There is no misty sea on that planet, and the route is impassable unless it is flown by a manned rocket. Urgent money can only go to sea. Go to other planets to search for gold. Zheng He held the steering wheel, tapped the plastic buttons with his fingers, lowered his head to look at the dazzling taillights of the car ahead, and pondered on the private work introduced by his college classmate. The history of gold miners is very long. They set sail by sea and sailed to other planets, searching for everything valuable in rarely traveled places, but the reputation of gold miners was very poor, and they could do almost anything for money. That's indeed the case. Those who are not short of money will go out to sea to search for gold, and one may die in various strange places. The adoptive father's generation had 4 brothers, mostly those who were on the same path. In the end, they couldn't even assemble 2 corpses, and the coffin was empty. Last year, his adoptive father took him back to Earth to pay respects to his ancestors. He even joked at the grave, saying that the paper money had been burned somewhere and that the ancestors had to fly back from outer space to collect it. At that time, Zheng He choked on the air and shook his hand, almost hitting the bottle on the ground. If not, go ahead. After all, it is the era of great navigation, and the quickest way to make money is to go out to sea to search for gold. Zheng He did not hesitate too much. Jiang Meng still needs to undergo surgery, and if he goes further down, he can only sell his house. However, in this old city, which was built in the late Ming dynasty, water, electricity, and gas are all outsourced, so he cannot sell them at a good price. The high housing prices are high enough, but now who buys an old house saves a lifetime of money. If they want to buy a new house, they will definitely buy it. Buying an old house is enough to even get married and start a family. Nowadays, young people want to drive. When there is a lot of pressure in big cities, they can go to newly developed small cities on other planets. There are many planets on the endless journey, and they can walk as they please. They are the only ones who cannot escape from their family work and continue to endure in big cities with low income and inability to afford new houses. It is estimated that they will not be able to endure until their city is no longer viable, and when will it be the end? And his situation is even worse. He is short of money, a large sum of money. The time when I played and frolicked with Jiang Meng in my childhood was like yesterday. How could someone who was a brother ignore her? In the past, his adoptive parents took him home and treated him as if he had left for so many years. His food, drink, and clothing were not bad for him at all. Now it's his turn to take care of this family. Although he is an adopted son, he is also a member of the old Jiang family. His adoptive father fell ill and could not go out of the sea. In the end, he lived a peaceful life, but in the Jiang family, he rebelled against his ancestral teachings. My adoptive father defied his ancestral teachings. Return it on his own. Every day in the city, like a living dead person, you can see your head at a glance, and living is not very interesting. It's better to go out and give your family a hard fight. Go out to sea, life or death is determined by heaven. Zheng He looked up again, his thoughts wandering as he gazed at the blue star above his head, with hidden expectations in his eyes. This is a magical world, and since Zheng He fell into a fog in the early Ming dynasty, passing through the fog but entering another planet, history has officially entered a new chapter. In 1405, Zheng He led his boatmen to sea, but on his way back, he encountered pirates who pretended to surrender and rob him. 10,000 people fought at sea and killed 5,000 thieves. The leader of the pirates, Chen Zuyi, fled to the east. Zheng He pursued and reached the depths of the eastern ocean, where the sea was shrouded in thick fog. Through the fog, March suddenly became clear, but he saw 2 rounds of red sun hanging in the sky, and the stars moving around in confusion. This is a middle school text. It records the first large-scale human entry into the misty sea, with tens of thousands of people participating in this crossing. From then on, humanity has entered the era of interstellar navigation. The location of the Misty Sea is in the central northern Pacific Ocean, spanning across the ocean from the right side of the Mariana Trench. It covers an area of 4 million square kilometers and is shaped like an inverted triangle. Just cross the Misty Sea. You can enter the outer planet. Although historical records are bizarre and complex, there are often bizarre events that occur, and both the East and the West have paid a bloody price in the process of exploration. But with the development of technology, the essence of the Misty Sea is gradually emerging. It is not an Eastern fairyland or a Western mystery, but a relic of an ancient civilization. This relic seamlessly connects the Misty Sea on Earth's Pacific Ocean with the Misty Sea on other planets located light years away. The Pacific Misty Sea is V-shaped. The next sea of mist is in the shape of lambda. After countless triangular misty seas were pieced together, a misty canal resembling V lambda V lambda V lambda V was finally formed. When a ship passes through the slanted edge of the misty sea from the inside, it will enter the next misty sea and then sail south or north to break free from the fog and enter the planet. These planets share common characteristics, as they all have oceans composed mainly of liquid water, and most of them have a livable atmospheric environment. At this moment, the planet he is on is the second planet on the endless journey to the west, with an astronomical distance of 120 light-years from Earth. The root number of this planet is W.02, formerly known as Xianfu Prefecture, but in modern times it has been renamed as Dinyuan Star. The city of Fuan, where he is located, has a population of 4 million and was a port city built by the Ming Empire in the mid-Ming dynasty. There are still a large number of Ming dynasty ruins to this day. My adoptive father, Jiang Jiangguo, set off from Earth more than 40 years ago and drifted on the endless journey to the west for over half a month before coming here to open a pawn shop. In summary, it is an ancient civilization built a long canal spanning the endless starry sky countless years ago. Endless Voyage, a cultural wonder that uses the ocean and water as carriers, livable planets as ports, and boats to navigate through the vast Milky Way. Primitive wooden boards, ancient wooden boats and sailboats, modern steam or gas-powered ships, and modern nuclear-powered ships can all navigate within them. Earth is just one of the stations. It completely changed the course of the time 600 years ago and opened a new era of human civilization in the 15th century. The interstellar version of the Age of Discovery. The sea is the way out of all difficulties. Going out to sea is the hope of all the destitute. From ancient times to the present, from sunken ships, pirates, treasures to porcelain, gold mining, slaves, and then to oil, minerals, and seaports, how many people have risen to wealth by sea? Until now. The legends still circulate on the sea. The tide never stops, the people of the new era face the difficulties of the new era, the young people face the poverty of the young people, but hope never changes. As long as he is lucky enough, he can earn enough treatment money from a few trips to sea, enough to treat Jiang Meng's illness. Newcomer's new book, I Want to Have a Good Life and I Am Very Sincere. Everyone, please give me some follow-up and recommendation tickets. If I didn't follow up on the new book, I will send it to everyone. Bang bang. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. 2 charts. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Charts. 3 days later, Jinhui Road. Zheng Yun handed the store keys to 2 young people at the entrance of the pawn shop. By the time they pulled up the rolling shutter for inspection, the shop had already been cleaned up spotlessly. "Oh, it's really clean enough. Brother, you are an authentic person." The expressions on their faces were inexplicably strange, not to mention bad. After all, they were also serious about doing business, and who doesn't like a clean shop? But there was also a hint of disappointment in their eyes. This is a pawn shop, and if no one cleaned it up, they might be able to pick up some strange and good items. Zheng He didn't answer. He didn't even find anything good himself. How could anyone else go and pick it up? When the pawn shop opened, I didn't see them wandering around. When it closed down, I was actually very interested. It can only be said that there is still some potential market for this business, but not much. Taking a deep glance at the shop, Zheng He turned his head and left, his emotions even more complicated than those two brothers. The pawn shop fell into his hands. My adoptive father's hard work is now gone. Zheng He sighed silently, and as he got on the car, his gaze cast a faint glance at the two brothers. Not necessarily. Many things are not good. Maybe in 6 months, I can take back my shop. Opening a hot pot restaurant on this old street is not because Zheng He has a bad heart and hopes that people will go bankrupt. He really thinks that this business is not good. As long as he fights for some money, he can eventually recover it at a low price and pick up some good pots and pans. After the incident here, Zheng He had only one last thing left before going out to sea. To move the things that couldn't fit in the basement to his adoptive father's other basement. Last night, he took on the job introduced by his college classmates and went to Lake Krogart in the northern continent with route number W.06 to search for a very rare plant. W.06, W refers to the endless route west route, and 06 is the planet where the sixth misty sea is located. Not everyone has the opportunity to go abroad for gold mining. Without any connections or knowledge, going out is just wandering around aimlessly or being scammed away and losing money. Where there are good things, how much they are worth, how to get there, what you will encounter on the way, and how to make the final move, all need to be taken by someone to understand. Just the literal meaning of gold rush has dozens of ways, and as for other meanings, they are diverse, with each faction having its own way. This time he is on a college side, with his employer being their university professor, and he is going overseas to conduct research. There are a total of 7 people in the same group, 5 men and 2 women. Professor Zhang personally led the team, and the others took action to reimburse the travel expenses and provide an additional 100,000 yuan in cash. The time is 2 months later. Gather at W.06 in Sport. Zheng He had previously listened to Professor Zhang's class, but did not know what his main research was, only knowing that the course he was teaching at that time was biological environment. Strictly speaking, this overseas trip is not considered a gold rush. The task is relatively simple and the level of danger is not high. It is more like a way for college students to find employment. But Zheng He's college classmate had some tricks up his sleeve. Last night, in some unknown place, he took on another private job to find someone in W.06, with a bounty of up to 2 million yuan. They can set off early and arrive at W.06 as soon as possible. They should first look for people, and even if they can't find them, they won't run for nothing. Professor Zhang will provide a stable fee of 100,000 yuan and travel expenses. The only drawback is that it is quite urgent. The others have already set off by boat. If Zheng He also goes, he will have to go to sea today. This caught Zheng He off guard, but after much thought, he nodded and said, "If you're in a hurry, go ahead and try to earn this money first." He started tidying up in the morning, and after handling the matters at the pawn shop, he could leave at any time. Krogart Lake is a tropical rainforest, and it is currently the rainy season, which is not the same season as here. You don't need to bring too much, just a few pieces of clothing. As for other equipment, let's wait until W.06. It's useless to bring too many things, the luggage fee is quite expensive, and everyone else buys them locally. Didi driving the small truck with a pawnshop phone number attached, Zheng He walked along the old street towards the seaside and just passed an intersection before turning into an old residential area. This old community is directly behind the pawnshop, and my adoptive father has a basement here as a warehouse. Zheng He has never been here before, I don't know the size of the area. Can you put down the things in the car? Park the car at the entrance of the hallway. He pulled out a key and got out of the car, casually lifting the broom, intending to sweep the warehouse as well. Walk down the corridor. The hallway is narrow, with wires hanging above the head and induction lights flickering. This old basement is filled with moisture, and as soon as you come down, you feel chest tightness and shortness of breath. Found basement 306, took out the key but couldn't find the lock hole. The induction light was dim and yellow, and Zheng He used his phone and flashlight to tinker for a while before opening the door. The black iron door creaked. I don't know if it was due to lack of oil or aging, it was very difficult to pull. Zheng He used all his strength to pull the door open, and it was pitch black inside. Dust was stirred up by the airflow, and the flashlight couldn't shine in. Everywhere was covered in white flowers. But deep inside, there is light reflection, emitting white light through the dust, like several mirrors. The picture is quite eerie. But what can there be in one's own place? Zheng He didn't rush in and waited at the door for a while until the dust gradually fell. He then used his flashlight to touch the switch and turned on the basement light. Pop! A dazzling golden light. Zheng He was startled, and upon closer inspection, he realized that there were several transparent display cabinets deep in the basement, each with some golden lights inside. He pressed the switch. All the lights are on. The cabinet I received from the gold shop. Zheng He instinctively closed the door and looked at the display cabinets, which looked like those in a gold shop. It was probably taken back by his adoptive father at a low price due to the closure of his shop. My adoptive father is extremely ruthless towards the old neighbors. The refrigerators at home are all used for freezing fish in restaurants. As soon as someone said they didn't want to do it, my adoptive father came to my door. I took a few steps forward and looked inside the display cabinet. As expected, there was no gold at all. But there are other things inside. At first glance, he saw an ancient painting scroll laid flat on a soft red cloth, with yellowed and broken paper but clear handwriting, measuring over 1.5 meters in length. Zheng He was startled. My gaze suddenly became sharp. He quickly wiped off the thin dust on the cabinet and looked at the ancient scroll under the golden light. The mountains and rivers on top were painted with a wide river in the middle. This long scroll seems to be a chart of endless voyages. What era is it? There seems to be something wrong with it. These display cabinets are anaerobic. Zheng He looked strange. He had been studying these things with his adoptive father since childhood. Although he was not very proficient, he could tell at a glance that these were nautical charts. Moreover, this display cabinet is not cheap either. It is a professional antique enthusiast, equipped with a semi-vacuum chamber and maintenance lights. It costs tens of thousands of yuan per set, and I don't know where I received it. Take a closer look at the details of the ancient scroll. The drawing method of this chart is very strange, not conventional ancient methods, and it is difficult to distinguish the exact era. The more you look at it, the more strange it becomes, and it is difficult to distinguish between the southeast, northwest, and north. In addition to the route, the map also depicts the continents and a large number of place name annotations along the route, which looks like a sea chart on the horizon, but many places extend and protrude into semicircles, like a sea chart on the earth. At the beginning of the volume, it is written in regular script. Picture of Chongqing Immortal Mansion. The densely packed small character annotations are also full of place names and legends of gods, ghosts, labeled with feng shui treasures, and attached with rare and exotic beasts, resembling both supernatural beings and the classic of mountains and seas. This kind of thing is not strange. In history, before the Mid-Ming dynasty, many periods regarded the misty sea and outer planets as fairyland inhabited by immortals. It only decreased after the Mid-Ming period. Due to large-scale migration and immigration, ordinary people can now go to fairyland, which is no longer a fairyland. Then came the modern founding of the country. All the names of gods, monsters, and monsters have been changed to be more down-to earth in order to dispel superstition. Next to Fuan City, there is Sangyu County, where there is a Yangtu mountain called Xianhuang City and Huangtu Mountain. Zheng He even went there when he was a child. To be honest, that mountain looks more like a sheep's head. Although there are many phoenixes in the world and he has never seen them, the phoenix's head should not look like that. Shenanzhou. Zheng He saw a place name on the map and took out his phone to search for it, wanting to see where this divine gray state is. The result was unexpected. This Shenanzhou is actually the old name of the southern continent of W.07, astronomical number TRRC.A, and is over 390 light-years away from Earth. Even today, this W.07 has not been extensively developed by humans, but on this ancient nautical chart, it is only the beginning. Roughly count. On the right side of Shenanzhou, there are still 30 or 40 continents, all of which pass through endless routes, making people marvel at the distance that ancient people explored. There is also W.06. Zheng He looked to the left and saw several continents on the left side of Shenanzhou. If the chart was drawn in sequence, then they should be the continents of W.06. But it seems to be incomplete. Looking sideways at the edge of the chart, there are obvious cutting marks. The chart is cut out of thin air, as if this part was cut out from a complete chart. Turn your head and look elsewhere. There are also some strange things in other display cabinets, the most prominent of which is an ancient waist tag. The waist tag looks like jade or iron, and the material is unknown. A few lines of characters are engraved vertically on it. Governor-General of the Imperial Expedition, Deming Highway, Commander of the Western Territory Commander. In addition, he also found that there were a large number of books and manuscripts stored in the lock cabinet at the bottom of the display cabinet, all of which were ancient books and appendices related to nautical charts. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Black Jade Pillow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Black Jade Pillow. In the closed basement of the old residential area, Zheng He looked around in shock. These objects were real at first glance, but his adoptive father never mentioned them. Perhaps these things were sent by friends here, or perhaps there were some issues with their origin, or they could be heirlooms passed down from the old Jiang family. My adoptive father used to tell stories about his ancestors, which can be summarized as one sentence. The more precious a good treasure is, the more blood it gets. Things that are not blood-stained are definitely not valuable. These things are also. The picture of Chongqing Immortal Mansion. Just by looking at this name, there is a smell of death without a whole body. In ancient times, there were 8,000 people who did not die, and they were all sorry for the word Chongqing. Deepening Highway is also the same as Jinui Dongxi Factory. Among the 28,000 people who died due to the longevity plan, at least half were done by them. It's really hidden deep enough. This is the bottom line of the Lao Jiang family, isn't it? Zheng He sighed a bit. He had been listening to his adoptive father tell stories since he was young, but he didn't really take it seriously. He just listened to it for fun and didn't expect his ancestors to be serious about it. This type of object may have some involvement behind it, and if not handled properly, it can easily cause trouble. In short, this matter is extraordinary. We need to discuss with our family first and see how to handle it. Zheng He took out his phone and called his foster mother. The phone answered instantly, but the voice was Jiang Meng's, with a gentle tone. Brother, have you gone back? Have you had lunch yet? No, what did you eat? Zheng He's heart was slightly sour, and Jiang Meng's mood was good, but her voice was still very weak. I ate 2 eggs and drank a bowl of congee. You can eat enough for me to eat all day, cluck cluck. Why are you laughing like a goose? I didn't get an injection today, did it hurt or didn't I secretly shed tears, right? How could it be? Brother, I'll tell you, that Dr. Zheng is actually an alumnus of my college class of 2003, but I only attended college for 1 year and haven't heard of her. Even if we meet every day, Jiang Meng is still willing to talk to her brother, but she stays in the hospital every day and can only talk in a small ward. Just thinking about this. Zheng Yun's heart became even more sour and anxious, and he wished he could go out to sea immediately and bring back 1.8 million yuan. Where are you, brother? The signal is not good. I'm still in the basement. Jiang Meng, please ask Mom to answer the phone. I found some strange things in the basement and asked Mom how to deal with them. Brother, please wait a moment. I'll turn off the hands-free function first. Alright, what is it? I haven't been to the basement either. Brother, please take a photo for me to see. A chart and waist tag. Zheng Yun took a photo and sent it over. No, Mom. Have you seen these things? My brother found them in the basement. Who goes to your dad's basement, Zheng Yun? You should also avoid touching those objects. Don't get into this industry like your dad, you won't be able to get out for a lifetime. My adoptive mother's voice shifted from far to near, with a slightly disdainful tone. After looking at the photo, she continued, you can take care of these things. Mom doesn't understand either. Mom, you really don't know? Zheng Yun asked again. Mom advises you not to study, that's not a good thing. We should be our own people, and safety is stronger than anything else. Let Jiang Meng tell you, Mom went to wash the lunchbox. My foster mother returned her phone to Jiang Meng. Brother, Mom really left. Is what you told me the day before yesterday true? Do you really want to go out to sea? Have you decided? Jiang Meng asked in a low voice. The work in university, research type, is not dangerous, don't you know it all? Don't think too much about what's not, Zheng Yun said with a smile and ease. Then bring the thing that Dad left for you, it's dangerous and can be used, Jiang Meng warned carefully. What she said was a black jade pillow, about the length of an arm, which looked very inconspicuous, with some curved symbols carved on the surface, resembling those drawn by ghosts. My adoptive father said it's a talisman, the only treasure in the family. If anything happens in the future, soak it in water to keep the family safe. Zheng Yun has never believed in those. He is at least a college student. It's the age of technology now, so it's better to stay away from those gods and monsters. But now it seems that the black jade pillow thrown under his bedroom bed and the basement should be the same set, both of which have some origins. But this matter is indeed difficult to say. Even a black jade pillow soaked in water cannot survive, and with such a good thing, our ancestors can't gather a whole corpse. Do you have to float back from outer space to collect paper money during the Qingming festival? The signal in the basement is not very good, let's talk about it when we go back. Zheng Yun looked around and saw that he still had a lot of boxes to move. It was probably not early to finish packing them. Brother, remember to have lunch, Jiang Meng reminded again before hanging up the phone. Zheng Yun studied for a while again and took detailed photos of the chart with his phone. He didn't move anything else and didn't want to sell these items to Jiang Meng for treatment. My adoptive father hid them in the basement and didn't reveal a word until his death. There must be some reason why something that cannot see light must be allowed to see light, which is definitely not a good thing. Now their family is not forced to do so either. The pawn shop has just sold it for over 600,000 yuan, and Jiang Meng has not been short of treatment fees in the past few months. Instead of spending time figuring out how to resell these items, it's better to use them as a reference when going out to sea and wait for a few months to see the situation before discussing anything else. Zheng Yun is not superstitious. He believes in modern technology. But there are really good things in the heritage of ancient people, and gunpowder was originally made by refining elixirs. If it weren't for those ancient people who nagged and talked about immortals and ghosts, and also loved to tinker with themselves, modern technology wouldn't have developed to this day. This kind of ancient nautical chart is definitely not a random list of place names, but wherever there are names, there are some treasures to be found to some extent. Tian Kai Dibao is not nonsense either. Although ancient people lacked scientific knowledge, they were definitely not fools. Natural resources and treasures must be extremely rare and valuable even today. Let's all pile it up here. I'll move out if I have something to do in the future. Zheng He put away his phone, swept the floor, organized his things briefly, and then went upstairs to move things, filling the basement with boxes of all sizes. Half an hour later. The display cabinets and nautical charts are buried in boxes, hidden deep in the basement, and even when the lights are turned on, no one can see anything. In a short period of time, no one will open them again. It's already over 2 o'clock when I go home. Zheng He took off his dirty clothes and walked into the bathroom. He turned on the natural gas water heater and quietly watched the light blue flames boiling water through a transparent small window. After the water heated up, Zheng He took off his hoodie and shorts, opened the shower, and cleaned his body. Looking into the mirror, I am already 25 years old. If there is nothing at home, I should also talk about getting married and having a girlfriend. But there is no if. Zheng He's face was calm and he wiped his body dry. He changed into clothes and began counting things to prepare for going out to sea. He bought a ticket for the boat at 8 p.m., but time was tight. Before setting off, Zheng He called Jiang Meng. No matter what, he had to say about it, but he could only tell Jiang Meng, not his foster mother. My foster mother definitely doesn't agree for him to go. So Zheng He asked Jiang Meng to lie on his behalf and said that he and his friends would go out of town to do some business, and he would come back in a few months, so that his foster mother didn't have to worry about it. Unexpectedly. Upon hearing that he was going, Jiang Meng cried uncontrollably under the covers, unable to hide it. She could only explain to her foster mother that she had cried while watching TV dramas. She knew that Zheng He went out to sea to treat her illness. We grew up together and became Zheng He's little follower every day. How could she not know? At Jiang Meng's strong request, Zheng He opened the video to tidy up. She hid under the covers, typing and directing, choking and forcing Zheng He to put the black jade pillow into her bag. She is not superstitious. She could only use this method to make Zheng He safer because she couldn't help her brother. After going out to sea, I can't contact you anymore. The foggy sea cannot transmit signals, and the astronomical distance is too far. Satellites are not functioning, and a single text message costs tens of yuan. Signal ships also need to be used for transfer. So Zheng He held his phone all the way and chatted with Jiang Meng and his foster mother until he got in the car and hung up. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. 10 Days at Sea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. 10 Days at Sea. The seawater spreads along the coastline into a crescent moon, and the city lights refract into fine light spots on the sea surface. As the waves rise and fall, it can cause dizziness when viewed for a long time. The taxi drove into the port. Zheng He looked at the sea with complex emotions. This was his first time going out to seek gold, and everything ahead was unknown. He flipped through the photo album just now. The ancient chart shows the northern continent of W.06, but its outline is very distorted and does not match the location it is going to. We can only wait until the mission is completed before studying. In a moment of wandering thoughts, the taxi stopped in front of a vintage cruise ship called the Elizabeth, lying on the shore of the sea, like a city on the sea. It is indeed an old ship, founded in 1930, with outdated facilities and the advantage of being cheap. 100 years ago, it was a top cruise ship and its speed was not slow. Getting off is the gangway. Zheng He followed the tourists with a backpack to check their tickets, climbed onto the gangway to observe the ship up close. The white paint was hard to cover the rust, and several huge depressions were shocking. Find your own room according to the ticket. The room is in a classical Western style, with clean and cheap carpets, soft and old iron bed, and the only narrow and rusty porthole, with very limited views. Professor Zhang has to pay for the reimbursement of shipping tickets after returning from the mission. He is not financially well off and can only choose this old cruise ship to stay in a regular single room. The cruise ship will depart at 10 o'clock tonight. The final destination is in sport of W.06, with a total route of over 8,000 kilometers, approximately 4,500 nautical miles, passing through 4 misty seas and 3 planets. The average speed of the old cruise ship is 20 knots, and it takes about 10 days to arrive, including intermediate stops. 2 days later. The cruise ship is sailing in a vast white mist, heading straight towards the west of the route. Outside the window, there is a strong white mist, and the visible distance does not exceed 5 meters. With a steady wave of spatial fluctuations, this Elizabeth cruise ship, built in the last century, once again leapt into space and entered W.03. Zheng He has been watching from the window. He only felt a faint vibration, and then suddenly it turned dark, indicating that the ship had crossed the endless starry sky and jumped to the next planet. The outside of the window is still covered in white mist. This sea area is relatively stable, with temperatures and climate similar to Earth, but in reality, it is 170 light-years away from Earth, completely out of deep space. It's really amazing. Zheng He let out a sigh. Undoubtedly a relic of ancient civilization, cruise ships from the last century were able to navigate interstellar navigation without any pressure. No wonder the ancients believed that the misty sea was a dwelling place for immortals. It's not difficult to understand why ancient people were so superstitious when they rode on ancient boats to break through the wind and waves, passed through the fog, and saw the stars change greatly. However, today, this route has been thoroughly developed, with a bustling flow of ships and huge cargo ships weighing 100,000 tons entering and exiting. But there are also some exceptions. Zheng He captured several antique sailboats with his phone, dreaming back to the era of great exploration hundreds of years ago. Last night, he also saw 2 speedboats suspected of pirates from afar. Almost any ship has it. There are even people online who challenge swimming through the misty sea and rely on physical interstellar navigation, but there are very few successful ones, often losing contact halfway. The marine creatures on the endless route are not just for fun. Occasionally, they accidentally enter the earth and were mistakenly regarded as sea monsters by the ancients. They are everywhere on the route. Before humans set sail, they are the route masters. The transition rules of the misty sea are also beneficial for marine life, as only material near the sea surface can undergo transitions, making it difficult for flight and deep diving to do so. The mainstream speculation is that the endless route is created by a highly developed maritime civilization, and perhaps at the end of the route, that civilization still exists in the world. But that's too far away. The drone's exploration of endless routes has reached the farthest point of W.42c, almost crossing the cantilever of the Milky Way galaxy, but it's not the end yet. Walk up to the porthole and look out. The outside world is not completely pitch black, and you can vaguely see the deep blue seawater and some glowing creatures deep in the water, which looks unreal. My adoptive father once mentioned that a colleague found a sunken ship from the Ming dynasty in this sea area. The silver ingot soaked like a sponge and made a fortune for 10 lifetimes in a day. In the early Ming dynasty, some people came to this sea area and left traces in the deep sky 8 days later, at 9 p.m. International Time on May 5 and 10 p.m. local time in Insport. The cruise ship finally approached the port. Zheng He saw the city again, and through the porthole, he could overlook a distant but dazzling bustling port floating at the end of the pitch-black sea. The cruise ship slowly entered the south side of the port. Zheng He changed into a black thin jacket and T-shirt, off-road pants, a brown hat, and a rough and durable backpack in the guest room. The outdoor temperature is around 30 degrees Celsius, which makes it very comfortable to wear and looks more like a tourist. Everything is neatly packed, leaving the guest room, following the tourists off the ship, taking one step from the gangway to the land, with both feet on the hard cement road. My feet are a bit soft. The sequelae of sitting on a boat for a long time. Looking around, Zheng He walked towards a nearby taxi and gave out the name of a hotel, which was included in the purchase of a boat ticket and allowed for a free stay of 3 days. The taxi driver is a middle-aged brown Asian who speaks multiple languages and talks incessantly along the way, constantly introducing the surrounding environment and major facilities. This place does not belong to the domestic market. It was originally a French colony and gained half of its independence in modern times. Almost all resources were controlled by French capital. Insport is a port city mainly invested and developed by the French Silver Group, and both its culture and camp are considered Western cities. The taxi arrived at the hotel. Zheng He successfully got off the car with a tip of 20 and entered the hotel with his belongings to exchange for a boat ticket. He then put down his belongings and immediately went downstairs. The hotel is located downstairs on the beach. The sea breeze is cool and refreshing. Along the way, I encountered many tourists dressed in cool clothes. The hotel had a beach barbecue, with young bodies and alcohol intertwined under the night sky. The scene looked very nice. More than 10 minutes later, Zheng He walked into a coffee shop and found his college classmate Lu Ming on the table outside the door. It's really difficult to meet you once. Lu Ming stood up and walked up to Zheng He. As soon as he entered the door, he gave him a strong hug. When did you arrive? Zheng He smiled. He and Lu Ming were not in the same dormitory back then, but their relationship was excellent. No one knew that this guy was a wealthy second generation. I arrived this morning and waited for you at the port all day. You finally arrived. Lu Mingqiao punched Zheng He in the chest and suddenly noticed something. He forcefully pinched his arm and said, with your arm circumference, this time you're the one protecting us. You're not much behind either. Zheng He lowered his head to look at Lu Ming's figure. He was also okay and should have maintained his exercise as well. Brother, you don't have that talent. Lu Ming shook his head and pulled Zheng He over to the table, introducing him to another fellow alumnus. This is Song Wan, our younger sister who is a few years behind us. Hello. Zheng He nodded at the girl. He knew this in advance, and Lu Ming was pursuing Song Wan. This student was more fond of exploration, so Lu Ming pulled her into Professor Zhang's team. She is like a college intern, without salary, just following the team to gain more insights. The personal work of finding someone also involves Song Wan, but the two of them are considered as one person. They divide the money in half and give the rest to Zheng He, and Lu Ming will cover all the expenses along the way. At this point, Zheng He couldn't find any reason to refuse. When he went online with Lu Ming, he had to pay for everything except for internet bills, tobacco, alcohol, and meals. And if it weren't for this, I wouldn't have had this opportunity myself. I just hope he won't lose money in the end. Hello, Senior Zheng. Song Wan stood up and greeted, looking quite cute and dressed neatly. She was dressed in sportswear, not to mention anything else, at least very polite. Professor Zhang's graduate students are all overseas. Find my supervisor and ask me to find a few people for him, otherwise this good task won't fall into our hands. Lu Ming took Zheng He to sit down, took out a tablet and placed it on the table. He clicked on a photo of a plant. The target plants are widely distributed, with many in caves and mines, which is not particularly difficult to find. Our main focus is on finding people, and time is quite tight. Lu Ming flipped a page. A photo of a woman appeared on the tablet, dressed in a black ski suit, with golden hair and light blue pupils. She was very beautiful and clearly not Chinese. This woman's name is Daphne, 25 years old. She departed from our W.02 half a month ago and went missing after arriving at W.06. Her location is about 200 kilometers south of Krogart Lake. Isn't it a bit coincidental? Lu Ming smiled and spoke up. Zheng He recalled for a moment that the place they were looking for plants was near Lake Krogart, which was not particularly far away, so it was just a coincidence. There's only one thing that's quite strange. This Daphne is wearing a distress device that activates every 2 to 3 days. She should be still alive, but she didn't use the distress device to transmit any information, and her family couldn't reach her, so they asked someone to find her. Lu Ming carefully introduced the situation. The place where Daphne went missing is also located deep in the tropical rainforest, and there are rumors of several gold mines nearby, attracting many gold miners to go there. The target family is quite wealthy, and they say they have a considerable portion of the industry in Fuan City. In addition to people like them who come by the way, they also hire a professional search and rescue team. They happen to meet Lu Ming on the boat. The search and rescue team is different from them. A person of 400,000 yuan has to pay whether they can save someone, and there is no competition with them for their bounty-like nature. Lu Ming wants to travel with them. So he boasted that he was a graduate student in the Department of Rainforest Biology, and also said that Zheng Yunkai was in charge, with a wide range of knowledge and understanding of everything, as well as a special ancestral craft. This statement really matters. They agreed yesterday that the search and rescue team would set off first, but when they arrived at the location, the two teams would act together. Zheng Yun nodded in his heart. Lu Ming has a vivid mind. It is extremely dangerous to search for people in the rainforest, and he knows the pros and cons involved. Working with the search and rescue team is definitely a good thing. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Deep into the rainforest. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 5. Deep rainforest. Around 11 o'clock in the evening, an off-road vehicle set off with Zheng Yun driving, Lu Ming in the passenger seat, and Song Wan in the back seat holding a map to guide the way. There is a small town near the location where the target is missing, called Lamaine town, which literally means a mining town, more than 1,400 kilometers away from Insport. That place is too remote and few people know about it. It must be a paper map, and it is also a French map. Only Song Wan can understand it in person. Driving takes 24 hours. They took turns driving. Zheng Yun drove for 6 hours and asked Lu Ming to sleep for a while before proceeding. Lu Ming rented a CZE-3 domestically produced off-road vehicle with a horsepower of 1,000 and a range of 2,000 kilometers. The hybrid is equipped with a solar panel and a secondary fuel tank. This car can be rented for over 4,000 yuan per day, making it one of the best off-road vehicles that Insport can rent. It has excellent maximum torque, safety, and quietness. It's not safe to set off at night. Although it's still French, no one can handle any problems encountered on the way out of the vicinity of Insport. But they have no other choice. W.06 has 30 hours a day, and if they depart tomorrow morning, they still have to walk the night road by tomorrow evening, and it's still deep in the rainforest that is completely unattended. It's better to set off tonight than this. After going deep into the rainforest tomorrow, at least it's still an afternoon. Zheng Yun drives relatively steadily. In the first few hours, the car was still driving on the road, but the further it went, the harder it became to walk on the back road. In the end, it turned into a dirt road, with potholes and mud all over it. The only advantage is that the road is quite wide. This place was originally covered in rainforest, and I had to cut down all the trees and sell them in the early years. However, after passing by cars all year round, the grass couldn't grow. Lu Ming is also a ruthless person who can fall asleep in such situations. Zheng Yun saw his head shaking like a tambourine, occasionally knocking on the door, but unfortunately he didn't wake up and even snored. Zheng, after bypassing the scenic area ahead, you have to turn right, take a dirt road, and then follow north all the way, Song Wan said, holding onto the map. Okay. Zheng Yun nodded towards the rearview mirror, while Song Wan turned on the rear roof lights, pointing the way until now. In fact, Song Wan can also take a nap, mark the route on the map, and Zheng Yun can also watch it. There won't be much problem with the 1,000 kilometers ahead. But she was so jolted that she couldn't sleep. This made Zheng Yun a bit embarrassed, so he decided to drive carefully throughout the journey and didn't say a word when he had nothing to do. After driving for 7 hours in one breath, Zheng Yun woke up Lamaine and fell asleep on his own. He didn't know how long he had slept, but when he woke up, he realized something had happened. The sky is hazy and bright. It's still drizzling slightly. The car was parked on a small muddy road, with trucks loaded with fruits in front and behind. Lu Ming was in the driver's seat, looking at his phone and gnawing on a black fruit. What's going on? Zheng Yun glanced out the window. The glass was covered in mud spots, and the trucks and tourist cars covered in mud had all turned off, unable to see them all at once. Traffic jam, the road ahead is broken, and the search and rescue team hasn't gone either. They're stuck 20 kilometers ahead. Lu Ming spread out his hand, and no one can do anything about this kind of thing. Is there no path? Zheng Yun turned around and looked at the back row. Song Wan fell asleep with earplugs on, and the map was on her lap. The search and rescue team is trying to figure out a way. There are still 800 kilometers left from the town of Lamaine. If there is a road on the mountain ahead, we can walk more than 100 kilometers less. Lu Ming handed his phone to Zheng Yun and retrieved the chat records. The search and rescue team was using drones to take aerial photos to explore the way, and it was preliminarily determined that there was a chance to climb over the mountain. It's professional enough, Zheng Yun sighed. So we can't show our cowardice either. When we finish meeting, you have to hold up your face. Brothers can only rely on you. Lu Ming put down his phone. Aren't you a graduate student from the Rainforest Biology Department? This isn't your home field. How can I support you? Zheng Yun shook his head and joked, he couldn't hold on to this face. Let's start with driving. If you plan to climb mountains, the road is definitely not for people to walk. I dare not drive, I can only rely on you. Lu Ming looked serious. Zheng Yun nodded and realized that he had more experience walking on mountain roads than him. This situation really had to be handled by himself, so he closed his eyes again to conserve energy. 2 hours later, the search and rescue team said they had decided to climb the mountain and sent a top-down topographic map to try according to. It was better than waiting here. Zheng Yun returned to the driver's seat, stepped on the accelerator, and rushed straight down the road into the rainforest. Wet mud splashed under the tires, and shrubs and twigs were shattered and scattered by the car body. The entire windshield was covered in mud and leaves. Lu Ming bared his teeth in the passenger seat, not feeling sorry for the car, but mainly because the scene was too exciting. Song Wan in the back seat was holding onto the armrest, but rather stronger than Lu Ming. Zheng Yun was sweating profusely. After walking along the map for more than 10 minutes, they finally encountered a search and rescue team. Both sides flashed flashing lights, and Zheng Yun followed behind them to form a convoy. Afterwards, the journey went exceptionally smooth as the convoy walked along a rocky riverbed, covered in large rocks. The vehicles were bumping heavily, but they crossed the mountain after crossing the valley. At 9:30 p.m. that afternoon, 3 cars stopped in an open space outside the town and got off and collided. The search and rescue team consists of 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman, all of whom are Chinese. The leader of the team is named Hu Ruihua, who is in his 40s. As soon as he got off the car, he handed over a cigarette. The river pawn shop on Jinhui Road. Yes, you are. Zheng Yun was taken aback, not expecting the other party to know about his own pawn shop. I've been to someone twice in my early years. At that time, I was a teenager looking at a store, so it should be you. Time passed quickly enough, and you both came out. Hu Ruihua sighed, and as soon as he spoke, the people accompanying him immediately came up, nodded and shook hands with Zheng He, each with a smile on their faces. That kind of enthusiasm is not fake. Shaking hands is a serious posture, standing upright, and even Lu Ming and Song Wan politely greeted each other. Lu Mingmu was surprised and didn't dare to answer randomly. Standing next to Zheng He, he followed the rules and shook hands with a smile. Song Wan was not a big deal, just standing obediently. She doesn't know anything. Lu Ming didn't tell her about Zheng He's situation. She thought Zheng He already had this kind of network. Zheng He was almost taken aback by this incident, as if he had some status. However, upon closer examination, it should have been the face earned by his adoptive father. But my adoptive father has leg and foot injuries and has been staying in a pawnshop all year round. How could he have such great face? What has he done before? Or is this the face of the Lao Jiang family? Are you my father's friend? Zheng He didn't dare to slack off, bowing back one by one and then asking after another. I dare not. I also went with people to gain more knowledge back then. Is Uncle Jiang healthy? I haven't even bothered to visit the pawn shop in recent years, Hu Ruihua asked with a smile. He passed away at the beginning of this year. Zheng He whispered. He only said half of it, but in fact, the pawn shop is gone and he sold it himself. Ah, sigh, I'll just ask this one more question. Hu Ruihua was taken aback, his expression twisted, and he took a fierce puff of his cigarette. Let's not talk about that, let's have a bite of food first. We still have to go into the mountains tonight. What do you call that little girl over there? Come and see what you want to eat tonight. Wang, a member of the search and rescue team, quickly came out to make amends and took out a bunch of food to greet Song Wan. Song Wan turned her head to Zheng He and waited for him to nod before going. Did you come out specifically to save someone this time, or did you have some other place to go? A person in the team named Huzi asked tentatively. Come and take a look on the way, Zheng He said truthfully, as he did have a task to find a plant. I understand, I understand. Huzi smiled and nodded without asking further, while the others seemed to understand but didn't ask. Zheng He smashed his mouth. He didn't know what these people understood, but he probably understood through careful analysis, probably thinking too much or thinking crooked. Looking back at the gold rush stories my adoptive father told me, and looking at their expressions, I can guess 8 or 9 without leaving 10. It must be that I suspect I have some big business left. The search and rescue team are all people from the martial arts world. With just a few words, they can pull the relationship together. Both sides are chatting and laughing, coming together to check the condition of the car and give the tire some air. Zheng He glanced at Lu Ming, who raised his eyebrows with a smile on his face. This face was full of support for him, and the stone in his heart should also fall to the ground. This business was taken over by him. 3 beginners went into the rainforest to find people, but when something happened, he couldn't bear it. That's why he went to great lengths to boast about building a relationship with the search and rescue team. He was also nervous all the way, even muttering before that he couldn't show his cowardice because he was afraid of not being able to catch up and encountering danger. Now it's good. He laughed like a monkey's butt, not only building a relationship, but also building it quite tightly. Although the responsibility was still his, at least he could have a cushion in the future. Only Zheng He is difficult to withstand. Regardless of whether it is the face of his adoptive father or the old Jiang family, he must continue to do so, not reveal himself in public, and not damage the reputation of the old Jiang family. This can be a bit difficult. He has only gone out to sea for the first time, and apart from listening to his adoptive father tell many messy stories, he has no so-called craftsmanship at all. He is not even proficient in the feng shui passed down from his profession, and his heart is somewhat uncertain. This mission is a bit strange. I inquired before and found out that the missing Demengna has gone missing for the third time, and she has been around here every time. Hu Ruihua turned his head and saw that the meal was still waiting for a while, so he pulled Jing Yun to squat on the ground and discussed. The first and second times, as soon as the search and rescue team arrived here, the people ran out on their own, and then disappeared again after a few months, playing around with several teams and unwilling to take on any work. Her family has no choice but to spend a lot of money this time. We must get this girl back. I feel like there's a ghost in this, maybe it's related to this town. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Lamaine Town. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Lamaine Town. Jing Yun just looked up and looked forward. This town of Lamaine is a very typical Western gold mining town style, with a main street running through, surrounded by the favorite taverns, casinos, and brothels of gold miners on both sides. The gold rush has long passed, and most of the places along the street have been abandoned. The houses are aging and turning black, and the signs outlined by the old neon lights are mostly rotten. Looking deep into the end, many wooden buildings have been devoured and eroded by tropical rainforests, revealing only a group of pointed roofs, while the rest are covered with climbing vines and green plants. As the evening approached, there was a slight mist in the town. If there were any, there seemed to be no cages on the street. A few bonfires rose outside the main street tavern, and many people gathered around the bonfire to drink. There seems to be no problem. There are rumors that there is a gold mine nearby, and the name of the town directly refers to the place where there is a mine. At first glance, one can vaguely see gold miners flocking and scattering like birds and beasts, with a history of several hundred years. There should still be 100 residents in the town. There are also many off-road vehicles and station wagons parked on the empty land at Chinko, with license plates everywhere, which should be owned by tourists or gold diggers. Do you suspect human trafficking? Lu Ming interjected and asked. As soon as he saw a brothel in the town and combined it with the often missing beautiful girl, he had some bad associations. That's really an old tradition. There is no Western gold mining town that does not engage in human trafficking. If girls are caught in the town as prostitutes, thousands of people in the town will acquiesce, just like hell. Occasionally encountering a kind-hearted gold digger who said he wanted to take a girl to escape, but as soon as he left, he was just a group of penniless gold diggers who had to take their lives. The larger town has tens of thousands of people and a police station, but no one cares about this matter. Like black slaves, it is a default rule and cannot escape for a lifetime. I just suspect that there must be a reason why this girl, like being possessed by a demon, insists on running this way. Hu Ruihua didn't say much and turned his head to look at the trunk of one of the cars. He lowered his voice and said, "So I brought some things this time, mainly for self-defense." "Damn it, there's such a thing happening now, damn it," Lu Ming cursed softly. "Think about it," Tiger patted him. "This kind of thing is inevitable. Many gold mining towns are located in deep mountains and forests, often thousands of kilometers away, and no one can or even wants to manage it. Not to mention the deep mountains and forests, even large coastal cities and ports are flooded with firearms in foreign countries. If you don't agree, you can pull out your gun, which the authorities cannot afford to provoke." Jing Yun was also deeply moved. The history of gold mining in the East and the West is completely different. In ancient times, the East was mostly an official destination, with thousands of people, including those who surveyed and explored, those who sought immortality, and those who stumbled through gold mining. Those were the imperial officials who commanded the sea division at the behest of the imperial court, accompanied by the eunuchs of the imperial palace, and mixed with a lot of imperial eyeliner and many factory guards. Once some things are related to immortals, there will be more rules and regulations in their words and actions. On the other hand, in the West, most people who go out to search for gold are individuals, many of whom live in poverty and go out to fight for it. There are even fugitives, and there are basically no rules. These people are even more reckless when they enter the disorderly land. To put it better, it means releasing the wild and the weak, and to put it worse, it means completely animalizing and abandoning civilization. Throughout the history of Western gold mining, there have been few personnel involved, from individuals to groups. There are completely two styles between the East and the West, one is Shintoism and the other is full of evil. In fact, neither of them is very good, but Zheng Yunxian still thinks that the East is more meticulous in its work, at least stronger than the barbarians. My adoptive father mentioned before that in the years when the East-West confrontation was strongest, there were also people abroad who wanted to fight against Chinese cultural relics. The old Jiang family met one by one overseas, and the two sides fought more fiercely in the wilderness than in war. We don't have the ability to handle this matter. After eating, we'll bypass this town and first find the person. The target is equipped with a positioning device and is about 8 kilometers ahead. Hu Ruihua took out a map with a circle drawn on it. It was located in the northwest direction of the town, separated by 2 or 3 small mountains, neither far nor near. This is strange. If she was coerced, what did she do in the mountain? What was there in the mountain? Or was the positioning device thrown into the mountain? Lu Ming asked again. This is also where Zheng Yun was puzzled, but his current identity is complex and he cannot show his shyness, so it is difficult to ask and he can only let Lu Ming act as his mouthpiece. I don't know, I asked the girl's parents if it was kidnapping or coercion, and if there was any demand for a bounty. Her parents said they never did, but after all, this is a family disgrace and I can't be sure if there was one. Hu Ruihua shook his head, then gave Huzi a glance and looked at Zheng Yun, asking, anyway, we have to be careful. Do you lack guys? Before Zheng Yun could answer, Tiger Z pulled out a black travel bag from the trunk and placed it heavily on the ground, asking Lu Ming to open the door and put it into the car. Lu Ming looked at Zheng Yun with a serious expression. Zheng Yun thought for a moment and threw the off-road vehicle key to him. As soon as this action was taken, Lu Ming understood. He opened the rear door of the off-road vehicle and, together with Huzi, moved the travel bag to the back seat of the car for easy access at any time. After further discussion, several people confirmed the candidates for entering the mountain and distributed various equipment. Lu Ming not only rented a car this time, but also bought a lot of things. In addition to the clothes needed to enter the rainforest, there was also a batch of protective equipment and professional equipment, which was one level higher than the search and rescue team. He didn't care about this small amount of money, just divide it up. Everyone had a meal together, changed their equipment, and drove away. Zheng Yun and Lu Ming drove together, while Hu Ruihua brought Huzi and a skinny young man over there. The remaining people also need to enter the mountain, but only halfway through. It is safer to communicate through walkie-talkies, and in case something happens, there is also an extra way out. Zheng Yun followed Hu Ruihua in the driver's car. As soon as the ignition started, Lu Ming turned around and opened the black travel bag, sighing. This time it's a big stall, it's hard to make money and it's hard to eat shit. If there are really kidnappers and kidnappers, both sides will catch fire, and we guys won't end up here, right? Zheng Yun also adjusted his rearview mirror and took a look. There was everything that was supposed to be in the black travel bag, and everything that wasn't supposed to be. It felt a sense of oppression as he looked at it. Just now, Lu Ming was quite indignant, but now that he sees something real, he instantly feels scared. Zheng Yun is also feeling weak, but he is too short of money. Thinking that Jiang Meng is still in the hospital, he is not afraid. No matter what the situation is, he needs to take a look first before making a decision. Let's take a closer look, it shouldn't be too bad. That's just the worst case scenario. I just took a look and didn't feel very similar. There should be other reasons for this. Zheng Yun turned his head and looked down. They had already climbed the mountain and could overlook a small half of the town of Lamaine. He could even see the tourists and locals at the entrance of the tavern. Those people stood or sat around the campfire, without guns, holding only beer in their hands. The three cars climbing the mountain together was very eye-catching and also caught the attention of the other party. Many people turned their heads or stood up to look at the side, waving and shouting at the convoy. The distance is quite far, and I can't hear them shouting anything, but judging from their physical movements, these people are emotionally relaxed and should be whistling and cheering after drinking too much. 8 kilometers is very short. 20 minutes later, the first two cars climbed up a hill, but the scene before them was unexpected. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Abandoned mining buildings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Abandoned mine buildings. A mining area is located in the northeast direction, resembling a circular deep pit, with a yellow and white color under the thin night sky. When the wind blows, it becomes waves of white sand. The headlights of the two cars shine straight ahead, and the beam of light extends into the vast night sky. If there were seemingly non-existent white sand and ghostly flames, they would sway and swirl in mid-air. This mining area is extremely vast, with a diameter estimated to be over 10 kilometers, stretching down one ring at a time, and the deeper it gets, the darker it becomes. It's unclear how deep it is. This mine is really big. It's not my own place. I don't feel sorry for it. I dug it up like a bird. Lu Ming exclaimed in amazement, and even those who studied nature couldn't stand this scene. There is a road ahead. Hu Ruihua's voice rang out on the walkie-talkie, and Zheng He didn't understand anything at first. He followed the car in front for a while before realizing that there was really a road ahead. It's still a cement-hardened road. This should be a road in the mining area, heading northwest and leading straight to another mountain valley, and Damona's location shows that it is in that valley. After walking on 1,000 muddy roads, the last section actually turned into a hardened road. Lu Ming sighed. Take out the things. Zheng Yun looked ahead. The mountain was completely dark, not like any signs of human activity, and there seemed to be something wrong with it. Lu Ming nodded and reached out to take out a short one from his back. He had money at home and had been to the shooting range for a long time to come into contact with these things, so he could play with them twice. Two cars, one in front and one behind, descended the mountain along a hardened road, with more and more people walking along. On both sides were aging iron fences, with English warning signs hanging on them. No passage ahead. Is this area under government jurisdiction? Lu Ming read 2 sentences and then looked at the large number of camping tents and household waste inside the fence. His mind couldn't turn a bit and said, "What's the situation?" As soon as he finished speaking, Hu Ruihua's car in front suddenly came to a sudden stop, with a dazzling red tail light. Zheng Yun quickly slowed down and Jiang Kai did not rear end. There is a car ahead. There's no one in the car. You can take a look. The intercom rang out with the sound of Huzi. He got off the front passenger seat, with his hand on his waist, and slowly walked forward, quickly diving into the darkness. After a while, Hu Ruihua got off the driver's seat, and Zheng Yun got off the car to take a look. An off-road vehicle was lying on the roadside, and the signs of the vehicle should be that it had been parked recently. There was no dust on the car. There's nothing around, just this one car. Should we push it aside? Huzi crawled back from the darkness on the roadside and discussed with everyone. Too much noise, not far from the target. Get off and walk over. Hu Ruihua looked at Zheng Yun. Zheng Yun nodded and the group immediately took action, picking up what was supposed to be taken and walking deep with a flashlight, while Hu Ruihua pointed the way with his phone. The sky was almost completely dark, with only a few green auroras hanging at the end of the horizon. 5 people were extremely vigilant and walked for more than 10 minutes before finally reaching the valley. It's here under my feet. Hu Ruihua suddenly stopped, and the location of the positioning device on Demengna's body was right under their feet, but they were still on this hardened road. A few people quickly searched around. Zheng Yun looked around with a flashlight, and there were fences and rainforests on both sides of the road. In the depths of the valley, there was a 2-story small building with no light inside. There's nothing. He swept around and shook his head, wondering where the people around were, not even a ghost's shadow. Has the positioning device been thrown away? Ming asked, and now it seems that there is only this explanation. It shouldn't be. This model of device can distinguish the wearer's status. If it is lost or a person dies, it will transmit other information. Hu Ruihua shook his head. Do you mean she's still wearing this device, and she's alive, and she's around here? Ming exclaimed, which was too scary. Perhaps it's under our feet. Zheng He suddenly interjected and stomped on the ground with his foot. Buried alive. Ming was surprised. In the mining cave, it should have gone down from the building in front. Look at the door of that building. Zheng He lifted his flashlight, and the door of the small building deep inside was open. It's very likely, Hu Ruihua nodded. Which building do you mean we need to enter? Ming took a closer look and saw that the small building was tightly attached to the pitch-black mountain, with more than half of it embedded in the mountain. Surrounded by weeds, green vines climbed all over the building. Shine several flashlights at the same time. The doors and windows upstairs have aged and rusted, tightly sealed horizontally and vertically with some steel plates, but the first floor door has been pried open, revealing a pitch-black deep hole. Judging from the architectural style, this building should have been built in the last century and has been abandoned for decades. There should be a clue, Zheng He nodded. This type of building should be a mine entrance building, which he had seen online before. Do you really want to enter? Ming's expression is not very natural. He is indeed a bit afraid of this. The abandoned factory buildings deep in the rainforest are eerie and some people are missing. Western horror movies love to shoot in this tone. As long as you go in, you can't survive. Come on in, there should be traces inside. Hu Ruihua immediately walked forward, and Huzi took 2 steps and walked in front of everyone, maintaining vigilance and staring at the black hole on the door. But there was no obstacle along the way, as 5 people crawled into a spacious hall. Zheng He looked around and saw a pile of miners' equipment piled up in the corner, indicating that it had been aged for 40 or 50 years. In front of the hall, there is a mining tunnel that has been dug into the mountain. It is level and there are also 2 cableways hanging on it, which are probably unusable. With a flash of the flashlight, you can see a row of muddy footprints, messy with new and old ones. The latest one has been around half a month, with 4 or 5 people. That should be it. Hu Ruihua squatted on the ground, looking at one of the footprints, which was about size 37 and a branded off-road boot, completely consistent with the target's data. These footprints are important clues. It can prove that someone entered half a month ago, and these few people have not come out yet, at least not from this mine entrance. Has Deepening entered the mine? Are she still with 3 or 4 adult males? Ming asked as he looked at his footprints. Perhaps it's digging for gold. Is there a gold mine below? Huzi scratched his head and couldn't figure out the situation. Based on this situation, there should only be a few of us in this building, and there should be us and the 4 or 5 people who entered the mine nearby. It's highly likely that there's no danger. Hu Ruihua glanced at Huzi, who walked straight up the stairs, took a stroll upstairs before coming down, then shook his head and said there was nothing. Go inside and take a look. Zheng He was the first to speak out. The others didn't say much, walked into the mine tunnel back and forth, remained quiet, and walked forward along the tracks under their feet. The mine passage is not narrow, and off-road vehicles can drive in. The rock layers are very hard, but the surface is smooth and the standards for details are very high. This doesn't seem like a gold mine. Ming muttered to himself and reached out to touch the rock wall. The color turned yellow, with some tiny dots of light shining. Upon closer inspection, he could still see water flowing on the surface. Surprisingly, it's not a gold mine. What kind of mine is this? Asked the emaciated young man in the search and rescue team. I don't know, it's strange. This type of rock formation is definitely not a common mine, and it's not found in common cases. Lu Ming frowned and shook his head, unable to remember. This matter is getting worse and worse. Since it's not a gold mine, what are they going to do next? The only reason is gone. The skinny young man struggled to understand. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Deepening the Mine Tunnel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Deepening the Mine Tunnel. The mine is clearly developed by the West, with a strong sense of the last century. An iron lampshade is hung every 10 meters, which can be used as a distance reference. I have walked nearly 50 meters all the way and have completely entered the mountains, but the mine passage is still flat or its slope is very low, making it difficult to feel the slope. The deeper you go, the colder it becomes. There is an abnormal cold air blowing out from the depths of the mine, mixed with an unpleasant odor, which seems to be non-existent and sneaks into the human nose. It's very abnormal. We've only been away for a long time, and suddenly it becomes so cold. It's too unscientific. Lu Ming trembled. They can directly observe that the temperature is decreasing, the damp water stains on the surface of the rock walls are gradually condensing into frost, and the flashlight hitting the wall is a large and small bright spot. This smell is also unpleasant enough, a damp smell, like rotten meat. Zheng He sniffed it against the rock wall and scratched his head. This is not a mineral smell either. It should be almost the end. The skinny young man tapped the ground with a knife, judging from the length of the echo. I walked for another 2 minutes. A downhill road finally appeared ahead, with cement steps and a flashlight shining down. A few black birds startled and flew over their heads. Below the steps is a wide cave, with a height exceeding 10 meters and a width sufficient for 3 to 5 cars to run in parallel. Slowly descend into the cave. This cave is similar to a transfer station, with 4 forks, one in the front, one in the back, one on the left, and one on the right. There is also a cableway fork in the middle, with a row of mining hanging chairs hanging. Zheng He looked up and found a dense network of cables above his head. Judging from the thickness, this mining tunnel should have been a key project in the past. The cables were embedded in the underground tunnels of the rock layers and could not be pulled out. We need to go this way. Hu Ruihua looked at his phone's location and pointed to the fork in the road facing back. Leave 2 people here to wait. Zheng He smelled the smell, and the smell inside was even stronger. In case there were toxic gases or other dangers deep in the mine, others could greet him. Okay, Hu Ruihua nodded and asked Lu Ming and the emaciated young man to stay, while the remaining 3 continued to move forward. They were wearing clothes from the rainforest, and as they walked deeper, they clearly felt the piercing cold. It was okay to wait for a short time, but over time, they couldn't bear it. So the 3 of them accelerated their pace, almost running towards the depths, without paying attention to the environment. After walking about 300 meters, a wide cave appeared in front of him. Hu Ruihua stopped and said that the target was located inside this cave. This cave is noticeably different. The cold wind blew out, and the smell became even more unpleasant. When the flashlight was fired forward, it could only illuminate a small area, and the rock walls were yellow like a piece of rotten cloth. Be cautious when entering. The cave was empty in all 4 directions, but there was a large hole in the center of the ground that could not be seen in depth. It was surrounded by a low iron fence and had rusted away. The diameter of the hole exceeds 3 meters, resembling a ventilation duct, but the edge is a gentle slope with a large circle of dark yellow ice lumps, which are even smoother than ice. If you don't walk over, you can't see the bottom of the hole, and if you walk over, it's easy to fall off. The positioning is inside the hole. The target seems to have fallen in. Zheng, go take a look. Hu Ruihua took out a roll of mountaineering rope from his backpack, one end wrapped around Zheng's body, and the other end held by himself and Zheng He, tightly wrapped around his arm. Zheng didn't hesitate for a moment, grabbed the buckle, climbed over the iron fence and moved forward, slowly sliding down the slope, poking his head towards the bottom of the cave. Zheng He and Hu Ruihua struggled with their hands, and Hu Zi continued to descend, almost half of his body down to reach the edge of the slope, with most of the weight in their hands. Damn it! Hu Zi let out a strange cry. What's wrong? Hu Ruihua immediately asked. There are 2 dead people down here, damn it, almost scared me to death. Hu Zi's tone was exaggerated, kneeling on the ground and throwing the beam of his flashlight into the bottom of the hole. This hole should be 60 or 70 meters deep, with several layers of wire mesh at the end. On the wire mesh lay 2 dead men, both of whom were men. They should have been around for years. Hu Zi stood up straight, calmly took out his phone, took 2 photos before crawling back. Wait a moment, shout down 2 times first and listen for any movement. Hu Ruihua stopped Hu Zi. Hello? Is anyone there? Tiger immediately followed suit, shouted loudly, and then listened carefully with his ears perked up. After waiting for about 2 minutes, Hu Zi shook his head and prepared to retreat, but at that moment, he suddenly stopped and stared straight at the bottom of the hole. What's wrong? Hu Ruihua asked after him. Hu Zi remained silent, as if he had lost his soul. He half knelt at the entrance of the cave, hanging his head and staring, as if he had been sucked in by something. Zheng He and Hu Ruihua were both shocked. They couldn't see Hu Zi's expression, only his back. Then, Hu Zi suddenly turned off his flashlight. He was already kneeling deep in the slope, turning off his flashlight, leaving only the light source in Zheng He and Hu Ruihua's hands, barely illuminating half of his body. Hu Zi! Hu Ruihua shouted. Hu, something's wrong. There's a red dot hitting my face below, but I can't see it clearly. Hu Zi suddenly climbed down with a response and disappeared completely into the light, as if he had fallen backwards into a hole. Zheng He's heart skipped a beat as he instinctively tightened the rope, thinking to himself that this tiger was really a reckless person. He dared to make such dangerous moves in such an environment. Someone. There's really someone. Hu Zi suddenly screamed and continued to shout, light up. Let's turn off the lights too. Hu Ruihua looked at Zheng He, who nodded and turned off the flashlight together. The cave was instantly completely pitch black. In the deep cave in the center, a scattered red light was thrown from bottom to top, and the beam of light shook slightly and hit the top of the cave, illuminating the rock walls with a blood-red hue. This is a distress light. There is really a living person below. Damn it, it's not right. There are all dead people under the barbed wire, but there is one living person. Hu Gu, please release the rope and I'll go down and take a look. Hu Zi turned back and shouted. Zheng He took a long breath and lit up his flashlight, then exchanged a glance with Hu Ruihua and said, slowly. Let's call someone first. Hu Ruihua nodded and said. A few people returned to the first floor of the abandoned mining building, drove the car to the entrance of the building at the top of the mountain, and called Song Wan and Wang Jia to wait on top. The remaining people added clothes, brought rescue equipment, and went down again. This time, 5 people entered the second cave together, picked 2 positions and knocked down climbing nails. After thoroughly fixing the rope, Hu Zi descended into the deep cave again. Hu Zi wore a camera, which others could see with a tablet. There were several layers of wire mesh at the bottom of the cave, and 2 dead people lay there, hanging thick frost as if frozen to death. These 2 people are both explorers, dressed very professionally, but they don't even have a rope on them. In theory, they shouldn't have made such a low-level mistake. Mining without ropes. Upon closer reflection, it feels eerie. Hu Zi's movements were very agile, and he quickly fell to the bottom of the cave, moving the dead person to the side. He carefully tried the wire mesh before stepping on it firmly. At least -7 or 8 degrees below here, the wire mesh is very hard and should be able to be cut open with pliers. Hu Zi opened his mouth and squatted down to look down. The camera's perspective moves with him. Everyone can see that below the wire mesh, there are two extremely thick steel pipes, like water pipes, with a diameter close to 10 centimeters, dividing the hole into 3 parts. The deeper the hole, the narrower it becomes, with a diameter of less than 1 meter at the deepest point. There is not enough space for people to go down, even for a very thin girl. Is anyone there? Tiger shouted again. Below came another red light, seemingly just a few meters below the barbed wire fence. The flashlight was too bright and had to be turned off to see the target position. It's confirmed that someone is alive, but there are 7 or 8 corpses below. I don't know what the situation is. Huzi knelt down on the wire mesh, leaned his eyes against the hole in the wire mesh and looked down. He also plugged the camera in to observe details as much as possible. The red light reflected many limbs around, with white frost hanging on 7 or 8 arms and legs. The swaying red light arms seemed to be wearing pink cotton clothes, as it was a light source and Tiger could not see the surrounding environment. A few people are watching around the tablet. There is only one red light source below, and the image captured by the camera is somewhat distorted, but it looks even more terrifying than the scenes in thrillers. Lying down, Lu Ming exclaimed in surprise. Where did so many dead people come from? The emaciated young man also felt a wave of nervousness, and a chill surged from his back. Let's come up first. The target should be right below. If we don't speak, we may be frozen stiff. People can be saved, but we need to think about it. Hu Ruihua looked at everyone. There are 2 options now. One is to cut off the wire mesh and water pipe. The times have changed. In front of portable cutting machines, this is just a small matter, just connect a wire from the car. The second is to take a detour, and if the wire mesh is intact, then the person below is not going through a ventilation hole, there must be other ways to go around. After discussing for a while, most people felt that they could cut the pipe, but only Zheng He felt that they should take a detour. If it is a water pipe that leaks after being cut off, pouring water on the person and adding low temperature can easily freeze the target to death. Those 2 pipes seem very cold, and the cold air comes from them. Tiger climbed up from the hole, and a circle of frost had already formed on his knees. I remember, this is a sandstone layer that is very permeable, so I used a cooling pipe to freeze the surrounding area in order to further mine the ore. Lu Ming suddenly slapped his head and ran to the corner of the cave in great excitement, pointing to the rock wall and opening his mouth. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 2 shots. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. 2 shots. So what exactly is this mine? Cooling pipe, frozen rock layer. How many pipes do we need in such a large mining area? What mine is so valuable? This mine has been abandoned for at least decades. Can this cooling pipe cool down to today in one breath? Everyone else turned around to look at Lu Ming, chattering and asking questions. The flashlight hit Lu Ming's face, making him unable to open his eyes. He quickly protected his eyes and shook his head. How the hell do I know? There's everything in the sandstone layer, and who knows what's inside? I'm not a geologist, so don't shake your eyes. If you shake your eyes again, you'll be blind. If it is confirmed to be a cooling pipe, then this pipe cannot be cut, and we can only take a detour from other places. Hu Ruihua looked at Zheng He with a serious expression. There must be coolant in the cooling pipe, no matter what type it is. As long as it leaks down, the person below will definitely not be able to persist and rescue them. Without a map, this road is difficult to detour. Zheng He recalled his observations along the way, without seeing any safety signs or maps of the mining area from beginning to end. It's also problematic to think carefully. The engineering of this mine is extremely delicate. In the last century, if we wanted to do this kind of work, only the national team would step down. The cement road that came also had English warning signs hanging on it, which was probably created by Britain and America. But this level of mine has not left any safety signs, and there are so many corpses in the mine, which is too strange. There are too many forks in this place, why don't we split up and take action? Hu Ruihua and Jingyan discussed. Jingyan felt a lot of pressure, and Hu Ruihua asked him everything, but how dare he make a decision easily when he's just starting out? At this moment, a strange noise echoed from behind. Everyone looked back, only to find a figure flashing past the first four-way cave they passed by 300 meters behind. What person? Hu Zi reacted the fastest and pulled out his weapon, chasing after him with a flashlight. Zheng Yun and others quickly followed suit. The cave was the first one, and walking up was the abandoned mining building. Even entering and exiting could not avoid Wang Jia and Song Wan. That figure runs away whenever they see someone, it must be an outsider, which means Song Wan and the others are in danger. I'm lying down. At this moment, Lu Ming ran faster than anyone else, took out the guy pinned at the back, and closely followed Tiger. 300 meters away in an instant, but Hu Zi and Lu Ming went their separate ways. Hu Zi ran into the left mine to pursue people, while Lu Ming climbed the stairs and ran up. The people behind also rushed immediately. At the fork in the road, Hu Ruihua nodded to Zheng Yun and followed Hu Zi to the left with the skinny young man, asking Zheng Yun to go up and see what was happening. Zheng Yun has better physical fitness than Lu Ming and can climb stairs faster. However, he ran back to the abandoned building one step ahead of him and shone a flashlight around. What's wrong? Sister Wang was startled. She and Song Wan were guarding the lobby on the first floor, while the search and rescue team, Shaoli, was squatting in the weeds at the door, holding a night vision telescope to monitor the surroundings and the way in. Are you okay? Jingyan frowned and asked. It's okay, what's going on down there? Sister Wang covered her chest and was scared enough by this one. Jingyan didn't answer, and there were batteries on the floor in the lobby and 2 lights in the corner. They were even using a water heater to boil water, like camping in the wilderness. Song Wan, are you okay? Ha! Lu Ming ran up panting heavily and was also taken aback when he saw this scene. He immediately looked at Zheng Yun and said, it's broken, that person didn't enter from here. What do you mean, there are others down there? We've been here all along and haven't seen anyone. Wang's eyes changed, she picked up the walkie-talkie, pressed the button, and asked a few questions, but no one responded. Bang bang. 2 muffled noises came from the mining tunnel. Lu Ming's face turned a little pale in an instant, and he raised his finger to the deep mine passage. His arm trembled slightly, and he suppressed his voice and said to Zheng Yun, this is a gunshot. It's broken, Shaoli. Sister Wang panicked and shouted at the door, putting on her cotton jacket and about to enter the mine. The search and rescue team rarely encountered such a situation, and Shaoli had not seen the world before entering the industry. He hurriedly ran in from the door and fell. It's useless for you to go down. The mining tunnel is full of forks, and without markings, it's impossible to catch up. Hu Zi has a camera on his head, can you adjust it? Zheng Yun immediately stopped Wang Jia and Shaoli. He could understand their emotions, but this statement was also true. The more critical the moment, the more calm it was. Sure, I'll give it a try. Shaoli immediately took out a tablet and played with it for a minute, revealing a crying face. It's too deep, the signal can't be transmitted. I'll go down, you guys should still guard here, but be careful. Don't go down if you have nothing to do. Zheng Yun patted Lu Ming's shoulder. Let me go with you, don't let me embarrass myself in front of my junior sister. Lu Ming forced out a half smile and shook the guy in his hand, saying, I know how to use this. Zheng Yun glanced at him and saw that Lu Ming was not someone who wanted face. Whether to lose face or not was just an excuse. He had never lost face before and had never seen him care. So you have to stay, we also need you here. Zheng Yun still refused Lu Ming, who is a wealthy second generation and not short of money. What are you doing in this muddy water? Zheng Xiaoga, let's go down with you. Wang Jie took out 2 guys from her black backpack on the ground and threw them to Zheng Yun, indicating that she had made up her mind. Zheng Yun didn't say much, so he asked Lu Ming to be careful and immediately took Wang Jie into the mine. The 2 of them ran into the first 4-way cave in one breath, carefully looked around, and walked in the direction of Huruehua and Huzi, which was directly ahead. This mine passage is different from the one directly behind. Just after walking over 100 meters, there is a downward step, and then every 100 meters, there is a step. After 5 or 6 floors, they entered a 3-way tunnel again, but this tunnel was as deep and endless as a subway tunnel, with a width and height of over 10 meters in all 3 directions, and flashlights could not shine to the end. The roof of the cave is still dripping water. The sound of dripping water echoed from all directions, echoing ethereal throughout the cave. If there were any subtle movements, they could not hear them clearly. This should be the main mine track, with an aging cableway overhead and abandoned railway tracks on the ground. It may be several kilometers deep on both sides, otherwise there is no need to lay railway tracks. Zheng Yun couldn't see any figures or light sources. He and Wang stood in the dark corner of the mine tunnel, unable to see all 3 directions with 2 flashlights. This environment gives people a strong sense of unease, and no one knows what's going on in the darkness. Zheng Yun's heart beats faster, and Wang Jie beside her is also breathing fast and her face turns pale. Zheng, it's on the left, Wang whispered, pointing to the wall next to her. There was a very hidden mark, which was half a palm print. Zheng Yun nodded and remained vigilant as he walked towards the left, his mind running at full speed, taking note of the route. If the abandoned mining building is on the 1st floor, then this should be the 3rd floor. I just discovered that the ventilation tunnel is on the 2nd floor, to their left. I don't know how far he went, but Zheng Yun vaguely heard some sounds and immediately made a gesture to ask Wang Jie to take a slow step, jumping forward for more than 10 meters. There is another fork in the road on the left. Zheng Yun instinctively lifted his flashlight and shone it over. A white figure hung in mid-air, right in front of his face, so scared that he almost threw the flashlight away. This person is hanging on the top of the mine tunnel. My head is tilted 90 degrees. A decaying hand was hanging in front of Zheng Yun, almost touching his head. It was pitch black and cold all around, almost frightening him crazy. This. Zheng Yun took a breath and found that it was a corpse, dressed like an explorer. It had been dead for countless years, and there were still 2 bullet holes on its body. Ah, Sister Wang exclaimed in a low voice. The 2 gunshots were clearly just fired, and it is estimated that the 2 gunshots heard earlier were from Huzi hitting the corpse and hitting the dead person. What's going on in this place? This person is fine, why did she hang herself? Sister Wang's hand trembled a bit and she walked up to Zheng Yun, trembling softly. Zheng Yun remained silent because he could see that there were 7 or 8 corpses piled up in the deep mine behind the bodies, next to a gentle slope deep cave. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. A large number of corpses. You are listening at novel full.audio. Chapter 10. Massive corpse. Zheng Yun carefully examined the body hanging in mid-air, and the more he looked at it, the uglier it became. It frightened Wang Jie enough, and she swallowed a mouthful before whispering. Zheng, what have you found? It's okay, let's find someone first. Zheng Yun looked serious and shook his head slightly, without explaining in detail. It should be after this. Miss Wang is not quite sure. She also saw other bodies deep inside, but she couldn't find any markings, only traces on the ground in front. Leave a mark. Zheng Yun took out a small knife and carved a mark, leaving a mark on Wang Jie. Then the 2 of them walked around the corpses and soon arrived at those few corpses. The 2 walked over cautiously. The surroundings of the gentle slope and deep cave were covered with corpses, and at a glance, 7 or 8 of them could be seen, all the same as those seen along the way, with white frost hanging on their bodies. It is estimated that there were also corpses in the depths of the cave, but the depth of the cave is unknown and cannot be estimated. Give me a flashlight. A patch of white flowers. It makes one's neck feel cold after seeing it. Sister Wang was speechless, her flashlight trembling and the beam of light swaying on the rock wall. Zheng He furrowed his brows deeper and looked up at the rock wall above his head. Since entering the mine, he had seen a large number of corpses, at least a dozen. These people all have one thing in common: they are not locals, they look like explorers or modern gold diggers in clothing, and their equipment is not very poor. It is difficult not to doubt whether the deaths of these people are related to the town of Lamaine at the foot of the mountain. Let's go. Zheng He continued to take 2 steps forward, but could not hear the footsteps of Wang Jie following. He turned around and found that Wang Jie was staring intently behind him. But her flashlight is forward. She was looking at the fork in the road behind her, but without using a flashlight, she stared straight at the darkness. Zheng He walked towards her side. Wang Jie suddenly turned her head back, revealing a face full of fear, her eyes wide open to the limit, her nostrils dilated, her eyebrows twisted, and her lips were still trembling. She didn't speak. Extend your finger to your mouth. Shoo. Zheng He saw her expression and realized that something was wrong. He immediately took a slow step, shining a flashlight towards the back in his hand, carefully walking towards her. There is the sound of footsteps. Wang Jie grabbed Zheng He's arm and whispered in his ear, her voice drowned in the sound of water droplets. Zheng He nodded, slowly placed his flashlight on the ground, then pulled out his guy and stared intently at the pitch black outside the fork, his nerves highly tense. Pop. A faint voice sounded. Zheng He and Wang Jie exchanged a glance, and they could both hear the sound of footsteps coming from the right side of the fork in the road they had walked on when they came over. This person didn't turn on the light. He was actually walking in the darkness. The two of them held their breath and continued to wait, waiting for nearly 10 minutes in one breath. Apart from the ticking sound of water, they never heard a second step. It seems that this person has also stopped. Zheng He suppressed his voice and took a deep breath, feeling extremely nervous. If he held it back any longer, he would probably suffocate, so he reached out and pushed Wang Jie's waist. Miss Wang took a step back. Zheng He picked up a flashlight and aimed it at the right side, then lightly threw it out, and with one step, he raised his gun and flashed out of the fork. There is nothing. The flashlight beam on the ground hit the front, covering hundreds of meters of the ground in an umbrella shape, and the surrounding rock walls were also illuminated, but there was nothing ahead. Swish, swish. A series of sharp iron cables suddenly sounded. Zheng He turned around and saw an empty mining chair hanging on the cableway, sliding strangely from the darkness, swaying but at an extremely fast speed. There is nothing on the hanging chair. It's clearly just a cover. He was secretly deceived and immediately turned around, only to see a dark figure quickly disappear into the end of the mine, entering an unknown corner and disappearing in an instant. Zheng He retreated to the fork in the road and leaned against the wall to catch his breath. The body hanging at the fork trembled with the vibration of the cableway until the chair slid far away before stopping. What kind of person is it? Miss Wang covered her chest and felt lingering palpitations. Zheng He shook his head and remained silent. He guessed a part of it, but he dare not assert it now. After resting for a few minutes, the mutation regenerated and a flashlight beam hit from the right side of the fork, followed by a series of footsteps quickly approaching. Who is ahead? The voice of Huzi echoed. Zheng He poked his head out and took a glance. Huzi could only see a flashlight thrown on the ground, so he was holding his weapon and gradually exploring towards this side. Don't shoot yourself. Zheng He turned around to respond, afraid that Huzi would give him a shot, just like the corpse next to him. I'm lying down, Zheng Xiaoge. It scared me to death. I said why a hanging chair slipped past me out of nowhere. Huzi quickly ran over and also got into the fork in the road. Didn't you see anyone when you came over? Zheng He asked, and the black shadow he saw was running towards He Zi's side. No, there's only one hanging chair. He Zi shook his head and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. He tightened his nerves all the way and finally relaxed a bit. Why are you walking alone? Where have Hu Ruihua and the others gone? Wang Jie immediately asked. Don't mention it, Brother Zheng, this time something big happened, we can only rely on you. He Zi sighed and roughly recounted what they had encountered. He just chased after the figure and ran down this fork in one breath. This part of the route was the same as Zheng Yun and Wang Jie, and he did indeed fire the gun. He gave people 2 glances for no reason before realizing it was a corpse, but he didn't care about it. He saw the figure running into the depths of this fork in the road with his own eyes, and chased forward. However, upon entering, he found that this fork was a dead end, but the person was missing. Afterwards, Hu Ruihua and his team rushed over and searched around, only to find a square iron door on the ground, which was as thick as a safe door. 3 people pulled open the door together. The result is a sloping staircase below, and there is a huge rift cave outside, which is 70.80 meters deep. The bottom is covered in white mist, and nothing can be seen clearly. He Zi went down the inclined ladder and found an iron staircase on the wall of the cave, layer by layer, connecting each layer of the mine passage. The inclined staircase is an iron staircase. So He Zi tied a rope and jumped down. The iron staircase aged and rusted, but it was harder than the road. Every other section was fixed to the cave with steel pipes thicker than his thighs. The 3 of them couldn't find anyone, so they decided to go find their target. They went down the inclined ladder to the iron staircase and walked down 2 sections, only to find that the staircase had broken out of thin air. It seems to have been artificially destroyed. So we had to go back the same way, but upon returning, we found that the iron gates in all directions were also closed. The 3 of them tossed and turned on the iron stairs for a while before returning. At that time, the mine they entered was even lower than the current level. Hu Ruihua felt that something was wrong and planned to come up and discuss with Zheng Yun, so they were all looking for upward steps or mines. But they found it on the way. Almost every fork in the road will have frozen corpses, not only hanging on the cableway, but also piled up at the pit entrance, scattered and adding up to hundreds of them. Even with a tiger-like personality, they were so scared that their legs were weak and they didn't dare to look too much. They finally managed to return to this level in one breath, only to find a hanging chair floating in the depths and sliding past them. It startled me again. Waiting for the hanging chair to pass, He Zi pulled out his weapon and walked this way. From a distance, he saw a flashlight lying on the ground, thinking that his own person had died before He Zi could finish speaking. Hu Ruihua and the skinny young man also walked over at the sound. When they saw Zheng Yun and Wang Jie, they breathed a sigh of relief and rested against the wall. He Zi, I didn't shout when I found my own person, but instead I sat here myself, the emaciated young man complained and sat on the ground panting. Brother Zheng, there's a problem with this place. There must be corpses at every fork. Is there any explanation in our feng shui? Hu Ruihua asked seriously. End of this chapter.